experience that's sort of measured by the energy level. Is this good? Is this right for you? Are you feeling it? Are you sensing it? And the environment is supportive of it. You're not being interrupted. It's too cold, too hot. Person's like dying of thirst. You need to go to the bathroom and they're squeezing their body parts because you're not letting them go. So it's this kind of an attunement thing that creates this experience. You could say it's a spiritual tie because it's the best of all moments and recognizing sort of like, hey, if there's going to preach anything about this ultra beingness, it's the number one question. How am I ultra being present? Now, the wisdom teachers would say, you'd be empty of these about me's, because these are just stories you're carrying along. Unless you're supporting a person where they're at, helping them move forward for their breakthrough, you might be holding them back or stealing the tie, stealing a person's time, their interest and energy, something that's not going to be supportive to where they're at. Because they didn't give you permission for the time, you're kind of stealing it. You didn't ask if this information was of interest. So there wasn't any value placed on it. You just sort of talked and person, you can see if you read the body language. Just read the bitty body language. They don't want to listen to it. They don't want to hear it. Well, that's psychic, sort of attunement. Like, well, that's invasion of privacy. That's karma to me. If you're where you're not supposed to be and you're just interfering with people because you know better, or you're not even attuned to the sensation that, oh my God, they don't have the time. Like, they just told you I got to rush to work, or my plane takes off in 15 minutes. I need to get in the car. And like, oh no, this will just take 1 minute. So it's like, oh my God, can we wake up, people? TIE, time, interest, and energy. Just simple checking. Is it a good time? Is this of interest to you? And what's the sense? Is everything good here? Are we ready to go? So this about me is carrying things forward. You sort of have to sort of say, well, what is the story we're presenting, So Guy Finley would say, it's about letting it go. Because once you've let it go, you're free. Just let it go. Boy, aren't we challenged by that? I certainly am. When I get up in this pedestal and I feel like it's so important to talk about self-liberation, like we got to do a self-live movement. I've been very lucky to have a lot of different teachers in that regard to where I could take on a moniker, but it is the unfoldment of the masks that are present. One time around a fire, after one of these lodges up in the mountains of Madre Grande, south of San Diego, near the Mexican border, I was requested by this particular shaman, happy face, would you wear a mask, mate, when we have the fire, and just share some stories while you're wearing the mask? Because I knew you'd be like this, sort of like, this is someone who walked to meet witch doctors and elders across Africa, the plains of Africa, for real. So it's like, yeah, they would have some ritual and we'd wear a mask. So would you wear one around the fire tonight? Yeah, I happen to have one, a Halloween mask that was a wolf, gray wolf, plastic. Wore it right over, a little bit sweaty, but people were like, through the flickering of the flame and getting a sense of this, getting a tale from the gray wolf. Whew. Just sort of some emphasis, again, but of the part we play in the portrayal of whatever this identity is, to be some I-awareness, as Dr. Job would say, being sort of I-aware. To me, I would add, well, then we could be where. We could be aware. So if there's going to be any sort of teaching or dynamic that's passed around, it's sort of contemplation, and of course naming it, then you got to defend it. I call it UBE3, just some kind of formula distillation that, hey, if I could bring it down to some kind of physics, UBE3, like Gandhi's dictum, you be the change, and enhance it with Einstein's E equals mc squared. Now we have something. Because there's this recognition of what we have present, which is this gift, as you are showing it, living it, being it, ultra being it. UBE3 is ultra being, an excellent example of enlightenment, as you know it to be. That was Annie and David's company, Excellence Inc. So ultra being is this manifestation, as one would just be empty, right? Sort of have it, let it go. But yet, there could be an appreciation of the here and now, and just a love for the company that you keep. This consideration I talk about in the REC formula, W-R-E-C-K, sort of like, all right, let's talk about it really quickly here. We talked about tie. So tying into what? UBE3, ultra being, an excellent example of enlightenment as you would know it to be. as you would wish to experience it. Maybe you would enhance what you'd felt in the past. You had a certain teacher or a model right in front of you, right? Your own invisible teacher. The greatest teacher that ever walked this earth, right, resides inside. We walk our worth. There could be challenges in the psychic dimensions of the storms of the mind and the mood, right? The swings, the dimensions of polarity in a yin and yang world. Right in the center, the razor's edge. In a true neutral zone of love coming from heart, you can never be wrong. You could sing a certain song, but you can make right. For something that might have been in the past, you come from this space and say, well, look, if I'm owed, I have a debt that's due, let's work it through. Let's have this here and now experience where it's like dissipated, whatever that was, because it was just a thought in mind. And as one becomes a bit more attuned to this, and other than unconscious, or what I call the morb personality, morb.masstrance.com, waking up from the hypnosis of society, there's certain joy and freedom just being self-liberated, and not that you have to declare anything or wave any flag. It's just how you show up, ultra being present. And that's the ultimate tie. And you help refine and explore this experience and experiment of ultra being, an excellent example of enlightenment, as you exemplify it. And it becomes simple. It's no longer a pretense, or like you might trip over yourselves a few times, but you pick up it's part of it. It's not really anything else, you say, well, is it an act? It's just a way of being, present, allowing, giving, ultra being is what you make of it. So being at your best in this regard is a practice. Being present. So in the About Me's, when I've had these different role plays, now sometimes, you just got into the moment and you had fun, and that's all what it's really about. But at the same time, I was always taught to be attuned to that, you have everyone's attention and appreciation. If you don't, check in. Is everything all right? Do you need anything? This rec formula is really useful. I was taught before you went into anyone's tent or teepee, to make sure that they're expecting you. And of course, if you're part of the tribe and the family and the tradition, in and out you go and everything. But, it's kind of good if you're going to pay a visit that you might bring a gift of some sort, even a simple apple that they can feed the horse. That's really loved, It's like, hi, the grill's showing up. Whoa, whoa. So it was the first thing I always saw, and this was demonstrated to me and pointed out by the teachers. It's sort of like, do you notice? Sort of showing this great enhancement of love and respect, that you're always feeling warmed and welcomed wherever you went. It's like, whoa. So we're doing the rec formula, W-R-E-C-K, okay, in case you didn't know. Yeah, just really quick, and then we'll get off this call. Warm and welcoming. You are keeping it real. But what I found, one of the challenges was just up in the apartment in the East Village, but the door was always unlocked at all hours. People were coming in, and the shaman was there greeting them, warm and welcoming. But he always made sure, no matter, I would sort of think like, wow, that person's kind of off. He goes, oh, mate, they're always right. That's the key. If you could find out how it is that they think that they're right, and they have the right to think that they're right, because that's right? So if you can get right with them, well, you won't have to argue anything anymore, because you'll see eye to eye exactly to whatever it is they think they're right about. That's incredible to me, because I'd want to challenge you. Me, it's like, oh, come on. You got to make sure they understand. Making people wrong isn't going to make them sort of win them over. It's sort of like, oh my God, I'm just going to feel bad. Then you got to take an energy shower. You got to wash off that karma with that soap. So it's sort of like, it's like, oh my gosh. And you're really into it, right? Because you'd be arguing and really having a soap opera play. It's like, oh no. You opened the door to it and you invited them in and then you closed it and now you got to deal with it. So real, right, and righteous in the way that sort of like, hey, you honor people where they have the right. And it's right that they're here, no matter who they are. It's like, hey, it's great to see you, right on, And you do your best to accommodate them. So the E in the rec formula, so warm, welcoming, right, relevant, and, sort of real. is to make it sort of it is an enhancement experience. So I was taught make it easy for people. You got some information, just make it easy for them to be here and now, to receive it, to get it. Easier the better. If you don't have ease, you have dis, and I'm all about stopping dis. So you see I'm not putting the two words together, right? So ease is really the key. Ease is enlightening if you can make it so. If people get it easy, that's the education versus a education. It's good to have a hedge on things, but sort of like you have to be sort of present and aware of how one is. So warm and welcoming and real and right, and making it easy, that's sort of enlightening in that way, isn't it? And the C in the rec formula is really just what I was taught. It's consideration. Somebody who's needing something to drink, a libation, you were quick on the feet, and you might have blended them something in an instant that everyone got to share. So like, oh my gosh, ambrosia. So like, what was it? Or someone was cold and instantly a blanket appeared, or milk was spilled, rather than crying about it, getting shocked, it was wiped up and everything's back to the conversation. So it's a consciousness, isn't it, of consideration, concern for the company that you keep. Not as decay. No matter what would happen, would be the disturbance. It was kindness that ruled the day. There could be challenges, but we stayed kind. And that's showing that dimension of ultra beingness expressed in the rec formula is an elegant way to bring down the old stodgy paradigms or institutions that no longer work for us because they become stodgy or inefficient. We're just sort of holding back the dimension where we need to graduate and immerse ourselves in. Well, then we deal with it. Rather than there being blood in the streets and goddamn bloody revolution, this is the evolution. Everyone's included and everyone's welcomed. We're going to keep it real, and we're going to enlighten you in the way that we best know, and we're waiting for your contribution. Just doesn't have to be the brainwashing to defend something that's not real, that's made up, and is only enforcing the rigid restrictions that are keeping the consciousness from evolving. This is the consideration if we're going to have this enlightenment. CommunityConversations.com is part of this work. And for you particularly, it's loving conversation. So this intimate space of a metasphere between us becomes more fully informed, whole-brained. This is the branding. So something about me's right now is I would take a stand for this as this evolutionary. I liken the name Jivan Mukti because literally it means in Sanskrit, the liberated one. Out of the stories of woe, or not to say that I don't have to deal with it. I live in the mass trance just like you. And I have mood swings, and I'm dealing with incredible situations right now, if one were to really take an account of my life right now. But I don't go into those stories because even though it might be sort of, I was going to say therapeutic, but more in the sense that, it's really maybe talk to someone who's like a coach or guru or professional that can sort of sort through it and give you some good advice, like a mentor or a wise person. I keep it to myself because I don't want to burden you with my stories. What good does it do? Now, there could be something enhancing and enlightening about the About Me's Grey Wolf story, or Mike Rich back in the day, or who this Jivan Mukti character is now. What simply is manifest is someone who's all ears to you, who really cares and wants to have a great relationship and is looking for a way to forge, through the weeds and the whack-a-moles in our brains and our minds that have beset us back. Now, we could say, well, it's like you can stretch rubber band so far back, either it's going to snap or you're going to get some good propulsion out of it because you've reached your baseline. And I should write about this at some point, but like we're in the insight of IGO, where I go in my mind's imagination. I have a whole writing about this at igoresearch.com or igoism.com, IGO. Is sort of this integrity of this ideal, like where I'd like to go in my life with you, with my connection and community. If I think of this cosmically, where we become conscious and we're able to connect, what kind of community would this be? It would be enlightened. It would be more along this UBE3 line that this self-liberation movement is actualized between us. And we share some things, right? We talk occasionally. Maybe we do our own work in our own ways, in our own dimensions, so there might not be much sort of interaction, but we're never at cross purpose here because we want to support each other. And if we can help each other get out of our stuck stories, we might be able to elegantly wreck and bring down the paradigm that doesn't serve us anymore. We can recreate something new that's lasting, that's UBE3 as a philosophy, but also forges the way. So we become the light at the end of the tunnel ourselves. That we become something that we now represent is being truthful and meaningful and coming from our heart because we've learned certain lessons, And if we need